In the heart of the South China Sea lies one of the most contested maritime features in modern history, the Scarborough Shoal. For decades, this small cluster of rocks and reefs has been at the center of a high-stakes tug-of-war between China, the Philippines, and the United States. Now, the dispute has reached a new turning point. With Chinese warships patrolling aggressively and U.S.-Philippine forces sending their own naval power in response, the shoal has once again become the stage of an international showdown. In today's video, we take you inside this escalating confrontation, unraveling the history, strategy, and possible consequences of this maritime chess game. The Scarborough Shoal has once again proven that even the smallest reefs can ignite the largest conflicts. As U.S. and Philippine forces push back against China's assertive naval presence, the world watches closely, wondering whether this standoff will remain a battle of patrols and words or spiral into something far greater. The South China Sea is more than just water and islands. It is the stage where the balance of global power is being contested. Stay tuned for more in-depth coverage of the world's most pressing geopolitical flashpoints. Australian guided missile destroyer HMAS Brisbane departed from the port of Manila Tuesday, sailing with the Philippine guided missile frigate BRP Jose Rizal, according to a statement released by Australia's defense authorities. They were later joined by Canadian Halifax-class frigate HMCS Ville de Quebec for drills off the island of Mindoro. The engagement reflects a shared resolve to uphold a rules-based international order in the Indo-Pacific and reinforces the commitment of the Philippines, Australia, and Canada to promote freedom of navigation, regional stability, and collective maritime security, the Philippine military said. First held in 2023, Exercise Alon also incorporates drills in the air, space, and cyber domains. Over 3,600 military personnel are participating in this year's iteration, including from the U.S. Marine Corps' Marine Rotation Force, based in Darwin, Australia. Tuesday's naval drills came just 8 days after a dramatic confrontation near Scarborough Shoal, a contested reef in the Philippines' maritime zone. A Chinese Navy destroyer and Coast Guard ship collided, seriously damaging the forecastle of the latter, while attempting to drive away a smaller Philippine Coast Guard vessel that was involved in a mission to deliver supplies to local fishermen. The U.S. has briefly deployed 2 warships in a disputed South China Sea shoal where 2 Chinese ships collided earlier in the week while trying to drive away a smaller Philippine ship in a high seas accident that raised alarms about maritime safety. Both China and the Philippines claim Scarborough Shoal and other outcroppings in the South China Sea. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan also lay overlapping claims in the contested waters. The USS Higgins, a guided missile destroyer, and USS Cincinnati, a littoral combat ship, were shadowed by a Chinese Navy ship while sailing about 30 nautical miles, 55 kilometers, from the Scarborough Shoal. There were no reports of any untoward incident, Commodore J. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard said, citing information from U.S. officials and a Philippine surveillance flight. The U.S. Navy has for years staged what it calls freedom of navigation voyages and overflights in the South China Sea to challenge China's restrictions and its demand for entry notifications in virtually the entire stretch of the disputed waters that it claims. That has angered China, and its forces have had close runs-in with U.S. warships and aircraft on such patrols in international waters and airspace. The deployment happened after Washington's ambassador to Manila, Mary Kay Carlson, on Tuesday, condemned the latest reckless action by China directed against a Philippine vessel in Scarborough. The rich fishing atoll off the northwestern Philippines has been the scene of increasingly tense confrontations between the Chinese and Philippine Coast Guard, fishing, and other ships in recent years. The Philippines, a former U.S. colony, is Washington's oldest treaty ally in Asia. The U.S. has repeatedly warned that it is obligated to defend the Philippines if Filipino forces come under an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. On the surface, Scarborough Shoal appears insignificant, just a triangular chain of rocks, reefs, and a lagoon in the middle of the South China Sea. But beneath its waters lies rich fishing grounds, potential oil and gas reserves, and a location that holds immense strategic value for any power that controls it. For the Philippines, it is a lifeline for local fishermen. For China, it is part of its sweeping claim to nearly the entire South China Sea, outlined in the so-called 9-dash line. For the United States, it represents the testing ground of its commitment to allies and the defense of freedom of navigation. The latest chapter in this saga began when a Chinese Type 052D destroyer moved dangerously close to the shoal, shadowing Filipino fishing vessels and establishing a show of force. In response, Manila, backed by Washington, dispatched its own warships, including a guided missile frigate, supported by a U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. For the first time in years, the shoal witnessed a multi-nation naval face-off, raising alarm bells across the region. Vice Admiral Justin Jones, Australian Department of Defense Chief of Joint Operations, was quoted in a department statement as saying, "This exercise reflects Australia's commitment to working with partners to ensure we maintain a region where state sovereignty is protected, international law is followed, and nations can make decisions free from coercion." Mao Ning, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, told reporters Wednesday, "Military cooperation between countries should be conducive to regional peace and stability, and should not be aimed at third parties. China will firmly safeguard its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests." Zhang Junshe, a researcher at the People's Liberation Army Naval Military Academic Research Institute, told Chinese media outlet The Global Times, "The Philippines can take this opportunity to observe and learn about landing operations of Western countries, but the Philippines does not have the weapons used by the West and cannot realize joint operations or landing in terms of equipment and combat capacity. Therefore, the military boost to the Philippines is limited." As the waves crash against the reefs of Scarborough Shoal, the echoes of history, rivalry, and ambition are louder than ever. This small shoal has become more than just a maritime dispute. It is a symbol of the Indo-Pacific struggle. A struggle where national pride, international law, and the shadow of great power competition collide.